Alright, okay, jokes about note of respect. She's come all the way from Johannesburg, changed planes 8 times, hasn't slept, but she's here to give us a fantastic lecture. Michele and Venter-Davies.
Good day. Thank you so much to Rabin and his team for inviting me to be with you today. It is truly, truly a privilege for me to be in your country. It is a country I've always admired, a country that's probably a little bit more beautiful than my own, so it really means a lot for me to be with you today. You will see I consider myself, although I'm an academic, also to be an activist in the space of social innovation. I'm very fortunate to work for a university in South Africa that is based in the very solid belief that it is brands that have the power to change the world. And if we look at brands today, and this was alluded to earlier, many of them have a higher brand equity value than the GDPs of several nations put together. Brands are also led and managed generally by individuals with incredible experience, skills, specialization, and motivation. And anyone who follows the news in my country at the moment, we're not getting that from our government. And that is why we believe that brands can certainly make a difference in areas where it's needed. So, hello to all of you, and I would like to translate that in one of our 11 official languages to say Sawubona. Sawubona means we see you in Zulu. It is a Zulu greeting, and coming from a collectivist country with a collectivist culture, it means that we don't look at ourselves only as individuals. We look at ourselves as the product of many generations, of their knowledge, of their experience, of their wisdom, of their needs, their feelings, their emotions, their desires, and not always the desires that the gentlemen on the plane seem to have. So when we greet, we are saying we, based on all of our experience, greet you, who have a wealth of your own knowledge, experience, and emotions. And it's a recognition that individuals are very, very deep. And again, we spoke about consumer insights earlier on. And it really is the brands that have deeper consumer insights today that are able to compete most effectively. So the topic of my talk today is about empathy. And if we just look at a traditional definition of empathy, the ability to understand, to share the feelings of another. And in a digital world, this is often where we can make a difference. We saw earlier the proliferation of platforms that we are able to connect across with our consumer. And we believe that it is very important that we understand how to connect in a meaningful way. Just the number of messages, the number of likes, the number of engagements every single day means that human beings are becoming numbers to a greater extent than they ever were. We saw space programs being interrupted by numbers of likes and engagement levels. So that is a reality. That is the reality of the world we live in. And the number of choices that people have today, as we've seen, is growing while we speak. The number of choices will have doubled by the end of 7 or 8 hours in one day. So it is a critical component of brand and human centricity in a world of millennials. Now, this is a term that is thrown around a lot now, a buzzword, but it is a very, very real generation. And the millennial has been programmed, quite rightly, through a period of time to focus on the me. The millennial generation is the me generation. And that is why it's becoming even more important to ensure that that generation, whilst they are actually focused on self, are still in contact with others at a deeper level than social media sometimes provides. Social media also frequently providing false profiles of consumers, of generations. And when we drill down into the individual, we find that that social media profile is not quite what it seems. So we are looking at powerful change by understanding in depth. Some of you will be familiar with the work of Martin Neumeyer, one of the world's leading brand gurus. He's written several books, one of them being The Brand Gap. And Martin Neumeyer asks of brands 3 questions. And if we're not able to answer those questions of our brands, we need to refocus. And those 3 questions being, who are we? What do we do? And most importantly, why does it matter? And we know from Havas, some of you will be working with Havas, one of the world's leading communications agencies, that they do a report every couple of years assessing how important brands are to consumers. And whilst we know that every consumer is going to tell us brands are very important in my life, we find, and the number is increasing every year, that at the moment, 76% of brands could disappear and consumers wouldn't actually care, which is quite frightening if we look at the amount of money, the amount of effort, the amount of management that is going into brands. And that is not because brands aren't doing a good job, but as we saw, you choose a motorcycle, you have countless choices. And it's the brands that really matter to people that are the brands that have a longevity. So I flipped Marty's 3 questions to take them from what we call inside out thinking, from the brand perspective, the company perspective, to go outside in and look at the people outside of the brand, and to actually ask ourselves 3 questions in a human-centric rather than a brand-centric way. So looking at all those people outside of the brand, and that is not just consumers, we'll discuss a little bit later who those people are, but to ask these 3 questions of who are you? Who are you as consumers, as stakeholders? What do you do? What are your behaviors? What are your commitments? What are your passion areas? And very, very importantly, why do you matter to a brand? And it goes beyond sales. It goes to that lifetime value of creating consumers, brand advocates who truly believe in the brand, who truly care whether that brand exists or not, and finding out, therefore, what matters to them. So if we think from the inside out, we need to create very, very strong brand cultures about what we are, what we do, and why we matter to the world, not just to our consumers. But if we go from the outside in, we will then be creating an image of our brand. that people out there are resonating with. That people are actually saying, yes, this brand is relevant to me, and yes, I actually care about this brand, whether it lives or whether it dies. So we've spoken about consumers, but brands are holistic. A brand is bigger than just, as we said, the consumer base that we communicate with and advertise to. A brand is responsible to multiple stakeholders. And we need to develop empathy with this multiple stakeholder grouping. The slide incorporates very few brand stakeholders. It is just the key ones. And where we spoke again earlier about silos and breaking those silos down, it is incredibly important that all our stakeholders actually have empathy for each other. So, does the shareholder really care about the consumer? And I think in a traditional space, the shareholder cares in so much as the consumer ultimately will bring money into the business. But if a shareholder doesn't care enough about how those consumers actually feel, how they resonate with the brand, how do they know which brands will have the longevity on which they can rely for a return on investment? Do our employees, especially at a worker-laborer level, do they truly understand the shareholder? Or do they just see the shareholder as somebody who makes a lot of money, frequently at their expense? We need our employees to understand that a shareholder also requires empathy. That shareholder is taking risks every single day. The shareholder has a lot to lose if that shareholder invests in a brand that again doesn't resonate or doesn't remain relevant. So it is in the brand management space that we are seeing that brands require far more than simply the old 4 Ps of product, promotion, pricing, and place, people, processes. I know that there are probably 100 Ps by now. But if we go back to Marketing 101, we are simplifying, but we are also not taking into consideration the integration and the systemic thinking behind the relationships. So it is incumbent on brand managers to manage across all the stakeholder groupings, and therefore very, very difficult and challenging for a brand manager to develop true empathy with all these stakeholder groups. So we need to ask about who really cares about our brands. We know the shareholder does. How many of your employees can you say with 100% confidence really care about the brand that they are working for? One person. Okay. Most employees care about their jobs, but do they really care about the brand? Does the brand matter to them beyond creating them a means of income? We believe that employee love of the brand is what drives consumer love of a brand. And so we need to, again, empathize with our employees and know whether they actually understand why the brand matters. Are they able to communicate to others why that brand matters? So it's all about alignment. Alignment of a brand identity and your brand values with who the you is those stakeholder groups and why a brand matters to them. So we have shifted from that old world of marketing and the 4 Ps into a world of marketing 3.0, which means that we now focus on human centricity rather than consumer centricity. It is obviously consumer centricity at the core, but we are now putting that on steroids and saying it's much bigger than just what does the customer want, what does the customer need. It's about what does the customer actually resonate with. So it's about that developing an interconnectedness rooted obviously in recognizing how human beings think and feel. Some of the brands that we consider to be the wow brands and the now brands, and we all talk about Google, Apple, etc. in these spaces because they are the wow and they are the now, but they're not new brands. These brands are 30 to 35-year-old brands. So new brand initiatives globally that we are researching, we are finding care more about what matters. And we are seeing young people starting up businesses from very, very different points of view. Many of the old businesses, yes, were founded on the profit. Profit, bottom line, that was it. We saw the brands like Google and Apple come into the world with a bigger purpose, to change the world in a big way. And we are now seeing many startup brands, the Ubers, the Airbnbs, are the older teenagers in this market. We are seeing them change the world in different ways. So we are focusing today on making a brand difference rather than brand differentiation. And I will be using a couple of case studies from our own country to illustrate what some of our young people are doing.
Young people are looking for something else. They're looking for a different way of doing it. They're getting fed up with old models. My name is David Gluckman and I come from South Africa. So in South Africa we've obviously got millions of people living in informal settlements, and this is basically a direct result of apartheid. So what we see in South Africa are massive shack fires. Sometimes people die as a result of them. Many people, hundreds, sometimes thousands, sometimes even tens of thousands of people are displaced in one single fire. You know, it's what little you have is now taken away, and what massive ramifications that has on an interpersonal level, on a personal level, on a community level, and then on a provincial, governmental, macroeconomic level. You know, it's just those things have huge impacts on cycles of poverty in our country. So we've designed a fire detector, which is specifically a rate of rise of temperature detector. It is not a smoke detector. In our informal settlements in South Africa and across the globe, cooking, lighting, and heating, all generating produce smoke. So that reduces the false alarms. Over and above that, it's networked. If you have not addressed the fire in your home, within 20 seconds, the device will communicate with all of the devices within a 60-meter radius, creating a community-wide alert. We've got 2 million shack households in South Africa. We'd love to be in every one of those homes within the next 5 years. I'm not going to kind of just stand by and just do the status quo, because I think in many cases, in many sectors, in many industries, across our social sphere, we're heading for potential disaster. In my country, we want to make change. We want to see change. We want to see it now. Thank you, and please support our business.
Okay, so what we see there, and David went through a very interesting process of developing empathy by understanding why we have so many shack fires putting that in the context of the community in which they occur. Sadly, we have a very, very high alcohol consumption rate in many of these areas. The majority of shack fires are the result of alcohol consumption and people falling asleep, leaving candles, etc., burning. Instead of judging individuals for excessive consumption, etc., David decided to try and find solutions to a real problem. We couldn't change the alcohol problem, but we could try and deal with some of the consequences. In the culture of the communities in which this operates, it is about Ubuntu. Ubuntu means we all work together, we are one. So where there is a fire, it became critically important to understand that the community would want to be involved. And so he combined those elements and has changed whole societies over and over again. This has also had a wonderful spin-off for another stakeholder grouping, and that is corporates who are looking for corporate social responsibility initiatives. And they are now funding a lot of the smoke detectors in these informal settlements. They are very, very cost effective, and that has given more people the opportunity to contribute. I'm sure most of you have been exposed to design thinking in some way. Design thinking is not new. South Africa, very, very fortunate to host Design Indaba every year. Cape Town is the design capital of the world. And so we are exposed to design in multi forms every single year. And design has shifted away from a connotation of being artistic into people understanding that absolutely everything is designed. From an argument to a balance sheet to a TV commercial, there is design involved. And design thinking, oh my goodness. Can I have battery power, please? Wicked problems. And a wicked problem can be anything from a global problem to a problem that you experience in your office every single day. And I don't know about you, but in our office it's the photocopier, which never works. And everybody in the passages is saying, oh, the photocopier doesn't work again. And that's been going on for 20, 30 years. So that is a wicked problem. How do we actually solve the problem of the photocopier? So design thinking is about collaboration and a process of ideation. So I'd like to use an example here of sunlight, where we see that design thinking is no longer just a buzzword, but it's a corporate reality. Let's hope the battery lasts for 5 minutes.
The problem. Access to water is severely limited in Zimbabwe, including in urban areas. People are dying of diseases like cholera and typhoid because they end up fetching water from dirty streams and puddles. Those wanting clean water have to walk 5, sometimes 15 kilometers just to fetch it. The solution: the Sunlight Chiedza Ukukanya Ray of Hope project. This project saw the community collecting empty sunlight sachets in order to get a borehole. Individuals collected a smaller amount of sachets and were guaranteed prizes ranging from 10 to 20 litre buckets. Those who collected more sachets received bigger prizes, such as water tanks within their communities, further ensuring the accessibility of water to all. The result, the media buzz the campaign created saw it receiving over $200,000 worth of free media mentions and a 20% increase in sales. The initiative has made Sunlight the poster child for good corporate social responsibility and a hero amongst all Zimbabweans, not to mention the fact that the collected sachets were recycled, which made the whole project environmentally friendly too. This initiative continues with more. Communities continuing to redeem wrappers for boreholes. The project will develop further to include installation of solar pumps that will supply water directly into homes. This is how Sunlight is doing good while doing good business.
All right, so again, there we see a lot of stakeholders involved in this project. The wicked problem identified is one of no water in Zimbabwe, and that's not just a rural problem. For 4 years, nobody, even in the most affluent suburban areas, has had water. You need to buy it. So the problem in the rural areas is obviously exacerbated, and Sunlight saw that they could entrench brand loyalty in a very positive way, rather than just making community a charity type initiative. What do you think the level of loyalty to this brand is in these communities? These communities have become totally reliant on the brand for water. And so, as I said, very, very strong ideation, empathy for this community was established. It's not only about the poorer community where we are talking about empathy. Empathy extends to every consumer, every person involved. And empathy that is truly embedded in brand culture has been displayed again by one of the world's most successful startup companies, Warby Parker.
Warby Parker designs and produces vintage-inspired frames with prescription lenses for $95, whereas it would typically cost $500. And for every pair that we sell, we distribute one to someone in need. When we were sort of exploring this opportunity, we took a look at the industry dynamics, and we found that there were a few very large companies controlling the market and keeping prices artificially high. One such company is Luxottica, and they basically own the frame industry. So they're vertically integrated. They own manufacturing facilities in Europe and Asia. They own licenses to all the major brands like Chanel, DKNY, Ralph Lauren. So when you buy those brands, you're buying from a company that's just licensing and paying a royalty to those brands. Those brands aren't even designing those frames or manufacturing it or even selling it. So when you look at an industry and you see that there's this one company that's doing roughly $7 billion a year in revenue, and we're finding that those glasses are being marked up more than like 20 times what they cost to manufacture, we thought this is something where we can do good. We can disrupt this industry. And hopefully bring down prices for everybody, because it just doesn't make sense. So we thought that there had to be a better way, and lo and behold, we discovered that you could provide the same quality glasses, but for a much lower price, about $95. And in the process, we felt we could build a company that could do good in the world and could really be thoughtful in terms of all of the stakeholders. So for our customers, it would be exceptional value, that $500 product at $95. For our employees, it would be a place where they could flourish and grow professionally and personally. For the 1 billion people on Earth that don't have access to glasses, we thought that we could provide a pair to them for every pair that we sell.
What we need to do is really educate consumers so that they understand that there's really no fundamental reason why glasses need to be so expensive. At the end of the day, it's a couple pieces of plastic and metal. It's technology that was invented several hundred years ago, and there's really been little innovation on the product side or the distribution side. And the reason why there has been such little innovation is because there's essentially this oligopoly that controls the industry. And part of our thesis is that under $100, people start to think of glasses as fashion accessories as opposed to something that they buy every time their prescription expires. And so in the US today, the average eyewear consumer buys a new pair every 2.1 years. We want to drive that down dramatically and make people think of eyeglasses the same way that women think of purses or shoes, where you can own multiple pairs, you match them with different outfits, or you wear them for different occasions. You can have one pair that's a little more conservative, you wear it to the office, you have a couple of pairs that you would wear out socially. And we're already starting to see that among our consumer base, where a lot of our customers are buying 6, 7, 8 pairs at a time, which is really exciting.
Warby Parker has gone further in terms of their empathy and done immersive studies on consumers. And what they established, and those of you who wear spectacles probably have experienced this, is one goes into the optometrist and you're kind of under pressure, you're standing there, you've got 45 frames to choose from, you're shoving them on and off, you're kind of aware that everybody in the shop is waiting for you to make a decision. Can you get on with this and leave, please? And what ends up happening is that we buy, and then we have that post-purchase dissonance. Did I buy the right thing? Do I look strange? Are people going to laugh at me? And so what Warby has now done is their distribution model is for you to be able to go onto the internet, to choose 5 pairs of frames that you think would suit you. They deliver them to your home. They give you 5 days to try them out and live with them. You then send your prescription with the frames that you've chosen back to them via email, and they deliver the pair that you've chosen and collect the other 4 that you haven't. So that is truly understanding the embarrassment, the awkwardness of their consumers in a particular situation, changing the business model to deal with it. And they set a very lofty goal of increasing the number of purchases of spectacles. The average Warby Parker consumer is now buying 4 pairs a year. Okay, so the lesson from that is that by aligning our values and insights, the brand owners are earning millions. So we can move away from, we either make money or we work in charity, and we can combine those together. We rely on human beings to survive. So if we are not recognizing their humanity and the humanness of all stakeholders, our value systems are going to collapse. So we need to look at the future of economies. And in my country, only 3.6% of people can afford brands like Nike, Adidas, etc. It is a community where brands like soap are the brands that the average individual hangs on to, respects, and admires. And it is therefore incumbent on those brands to make differences in the world. And here's another example.
In South Africa, thousands die every year in disadvantaged areas from preventable diseases like typhoid, diarrhea, pneumonia, and cholera, which is due to lack of hygiene. In fact, the World Health Organization rates South Africa as one of the least hygienic nations in the world. Worst of all, the diseases affect the most vulnerable, our children. no more is it true than in Plekisdorp, an informal settlement in the Western Cape of South Africa. However, there is hope. Research has shown that the simple act of washing hands frequently with soap is the most effective way of preventing the spread of infection and deadly disease. But providing kids with soap is one thing. The real challenge is getting them to use it repetitively so it becomes a routine. How did we encourage kids to wash hands frequently? Introducing Hope Soap, a see-through bar of soap with a toy inside. If you want to get to the toy, you've got to use the soap. Community leaders are helping to distribute Hope Soap into the hands of kids in Plekisdorp.
The children are actually more excited to go and not only wash their hands, but they can't wait for another part because they want to wash because they want the toy inside.
Hope Soap instilled the habit of hand washing. As a result, improved the children's hygiene condition while decreasing their exposure to common illnesses. In the end, the children's small reward was a toy, but South Africa's big reward was hope for a healthier nation.
Alright, you can leave the lights. If we look at that example and we look at stakeholders, the soap is now made by elderly women in the community who earn an income from this. It is also sold through our biggest supermarket chain, Pick n Pay in South Africa, for the more affluent moms, and their kids love it. And so Hope Soap has really been a solution, but it's also created recently a huge problem in this community. And that problem is that we have no water. So I don't know, is there anyone from Savlon in India here? Because we are now importing from Savlon, India, an invention from their market, which is chalk that children use to write on their blackboards, and that chalk contains a liquid that when the kiddies wash their hands to clean the chalk off, it turns into soap, and it requires far less water than our Hope Soap does. So again, it's about remaining relevant. We had to remain relevant to our drought problem. The next clip is another entrepreneur who has won awards globally, who took on the distribution of medicine problem in South Africa.
What does it mean not to be on the map? To be off the grid? When you are in the bottom, it is the difference between sinking and swimming. The barrier to improving your life. If you don't exist on a map, how can you open a bank account? How can you vote? We all must prove where we belong. If the government cannot give us an address, then we have to look to other means. My name is Silvan Zima, and I run a courier company that collects chronic medication parcels from public hospitals and clinics in local townships and delivers them to the patient's doorstep. I started the business because of my grandparents. So my grandparents had to go and collect chronic medication at the hospital. And as a young boy growing up with my grandparents, I saw them experience tough times in getting the medication. And as I grew up, I had that responsibility to actually go and collect those medications. And being at the clinic and sitting in those long queues and waiting for those long hours, I actually had an experience with how bad it was. Being in an environment where you can easily be vulnerable to get sick. And that's when I told myself, let me start the business that will focus on collecting medication from people and delivering them at their doorstep. Architecture is like a maze. It's not an easy place to locate addresses. You know, when we started, we experienced some challenges. So that has been proven in the past with logistics companies, not being able to really work out the routes and the addresses in Khayelitsha because of the way the township is structured in terms of informal roads, informal addresses, informal housing, and so on. An app like What 3 Words can help us expand in terms of understanding our routes better, with an app that will allow us to actually distinguish which is the shortest route. That can really help us. That can also help us store the address on the map so that we don't have to get lost again. My dream is to be able to create more structure in terms of accessing or navigating the township maze. If you order something, it has to be delivered at your doorstep. Regardless of how informal the settlement is, regardless of how structured the settlement is, getting access to medication for me is really important, and that's what I want to bring on the table.
So there again, we see a combination of empathy for individuals and their experiences, combined with the highest levels of technology in terms of the apps being used. So, brand custodians, all of you, do have the power to change lives. At the same time, making money by creating this brand salience and brand resonance, which will grow exponentially as these programs become entrenched in our societies. Now, what are the barriers to empathy? Why don't we have the levels of empathy that possibly we should have? Prejudice is probably one of the major problems. Again, we live in a country where xenophobia is rife, a lot of prejudice against foreigners, and I'll show you a clip on a brand that's overcome some of that in a moment. Authority, the discounting of them, people who aren't like us, people who don't really maybe relate to our brands, people who will never be able to afford our brands, so why should they matter? The point is they do matter, and your brand can benefit, even if they'll never afford to be able to buy your brand. There are many routes to brand equity. Distance. So Lumkani, the fire detection brand, many inventors had not come up with something relevant. Why? Because they didn't understand that it's not about smoke. It's about the speed at which a fire spreads in those conditions. So one had to actually immerse oneself to go and find out what it is really about. And then, of course, denial. It's much easier to deny what is going on in other people's worlds. And as I've said, that's not only poorer people. So by aligning our brands with what makes sense in a human context, we can build equity through human centricity. And once you have that equity, it becomes very difficult for a competitor to erode. And this is why we say competitors and brands can easily differentiate. But it's only when they make a difference that that differentiation has longevity. And the next clip I want to show you deals with xenophobia in a very interesting way.
And now to Lebanon, which has absorbed the largest number of refugees from Syria since the conflict began. With money and supplies running out, the situation is growing worse, forcing children to work in the streets of Beirut.
In Lebanon specifically, there's no real established system to deal with these children.
Citizens used to hand them money, then they lost trust in them because some were put to work by gangs, who then bought cigarettes, drugs, and even weapons. So the Lebanese stopped giving, leaving the rest of the children, the majority, deprived of basic necessities. How do we get the Lebanese to trust and help again? The Lebanese note can buy anything, so we introduced a new note that can only buy good things, the good note. It can only be spent at Bukhalil supermarkets across Lebanon and its affiliated pharmacy on necessities of medicine. To introduce the new note to the Lebanese, we launched a cross-platform communication campaign. Communication led to thegoodnote.com. The word spread and partners began pouring in. Local bars, restaurants, cafes, baby shops, chocolate shops, bookshops, and even renowned jewelers are now selling good notes. On ground, we educated the street children on the new note and where to spend it. To make sure even more children could get necessities with their good notes, we put the supermarket on wheels by creating the Good Truck. The initiative resonated across Lebanon and the world.
Worth about $1 issued by a supermarket chain.
这些代用券可以用来换取食品、药品或者其他的产品。
With the Good Note, we got the Lebanese to give again and transformed a supermarket chain into a social service network.
Alright, so I really urge all of us, I include myself in that, to be mindful all the time of our own barriers and to look at the ways in which we might be denying our own brands the opportunity to grow. And I think for an ordinary supermarket 2 or 3 years ago, that would have never entered their strategic planning in terms of how to become a meaningful brand that's actually going to make a difference. So if we acknowledge the outside-in perceptions, people and situations that we don't always have control over, we can sometimes find opportunity. And I'd like to finish with what might be a kind of a strange case study, but it is a brand that I'm working with at the moment, Ultramel Custard. And we have a subculture in these streets. It's an urban subculture in Johannesburg particularly, called Iskutane. Now, Iskutane is a group of young people aged between 12 and 15 in the majority, but ranging up to the age of 25, who grew up in extremely disadvantaged circumstances. And Iskutane, for them, growing up, the biggest luxury that they ever experienced was Ultramel Custard. That was a treat that their grandparents and their parents provided them with, if they were lucky, once a month on a Sunday, which is our biggest meal of the week. So Ultramel was a very, very special product. Now, what has happened as Iskutane have grown up in a new political dispensation, they have still experienced very little change on a day-to-day basis. There's still very, very high levels of unemployment, crime, etc. in the communities in which they live. And what they do is they acquire brands And I mean high-end clothing brands, shoe brands. So you will find them wearing Hugo Boss, Guess, etc. Many of these products are paid for by their parents, most of whom still work as domestic helpers in homes and have very, very low income levels. But you will see there, and it's difficult to get photographs of them because they're quite an underground type group. But they now buy these incredibly expensive brands, like Hennessy. They will wash their hands with alcohol like this and throw it on the streets. You can see at the top there, they actually burn money as part of a performance ritual in the streets. And wherever they perform, either burning their money, burning clothes, washing their hands with expensive alcohol brands, they make a circle of ultramel in the area where they are performing these rituals. Now their message is, I grew up with nothing. I can acquire, but tomorrow I will have nothing again. And that took me as a researcher in the space a lot of time to try and understand why they are wasting money, which is actually their parents' money, on these brands, and they're just destroying them. And at the same time, Ultramel Custard started getting this association with a subculture that is not easily understood. And so working with this brand, what we have managed, and it is a slow process, and we're working through group by group, studies particularly, is that brands should be cultivating curiosity. Curiosity at a deeper consumer insight level. That's simply what do consumers need and want. And that facilitates brand meaning. We need to challenge prejudices and discover commonalities and ways in which our brands can truly resonate with multiple target segments and stakeholder groupings rather than just one or two target audiences. As brand managers, brand custodians, those of us involved in the brand world, go out there and try somebody else's life. Somebody that has a far more affluent lifestyle, somebody who has a very different lifestyle, before you can actually develop brands, understand the realities of the people that you're developing them for. So when you are speaking to people, you have to listen, and listen hard, and very, very importantly, open up. Open up to them about how you may be different, how you may be struggling to understand what they do. The Isikutani was probably one of the biggest brand challenges from that point of view. Inspire mass action. So we've said it's about individuality and mass, trying to combine them. But let's inspire mass action for social change. It is brands that can do this. And most importantly, develop an ambitious imagination. We know from the World Economic Forum, working as educators, that the 3 top skills in demand by 2020 will not be professional skills. If you are a chartered accountant, an engineer, a lawyer, it's given that you have certain skills. But the top 3 things that the world is looking for is, number 1, innovative problem solving. You only get that through true empathy. Number 2, it is about creative thinking. Again, you can only be creative when you are working with reality. And the third one is design thinking and systemics. Understanding how everything one does is interrelated and how everything that one stakeholder group does impacts on all the other stakeholder groups. I'd like to close with an example that I think if you have a look at it, please be mindful of all the different stakeholders who have been involved in this product, which we are now very proud to be representing in South Africa as well.
In 2012, we set out on a mission to alleviate iron deficiency and iron deficiency anemia using this, the lucky iron fish. We started our work in the country that inspired our mission, Cambodia. Why Cambodia? A shocking 6 million Cambodians are iron deficient. That's almost half of the country. And over 3.5 billion people worldwide suffer from this preventable condition. This is a huge global problem, and we are tackling it head-on with this simple, easy-to-use, and effective solution. All you have to do is cook with it. Using the lucky iron fish can provide up to 75% of a person's daily required iron intake. Restored iron levels give people more energy, brain power, blood circulation, and better health overall. It's something everyone can feel good about. Above and beyond our health commitment in Cambodia, we also strive to have a strong social and environmental impact in every aspect of our operations. That's why we partnered with like-minded organizations to help achieve our goals. The fish itself is carefully crafted in a small local production site using only specially selected recycled material. And it's shaped like a fish because that is a symbol of luck in Cambodia. Our packaging for the Cambodian market is handmade out of locally grown palm leaf by the good people at the Baton Artisans. Not only do they use biodegradable material, but they also provide jobs for disabled Cambodians, many of them landmine victims. Our international packaging is produced using recycled materials by Friends International, an NGO that works with marginalized urban youth to help them become productive, independent citizens. And finally, our branding, marketing, and communications are done by a local agency called 17 Triggers, a behavioral change lab that specializes in marketing for good causes. We've also carried out extensive research to test the effectiveness and viability of the lucky iron fish, and are now partnering with international aid agencies to carry out even larger clinical trials. Our dedication to being socially responsible has earned us B Corp certification, which is an international certification assigned to corporations who are committed to doing good. We're not the only ones who believe in our potential. Through grants, donations, revenue, and investment, we have raised nearly $1 million in our first 2 years of operation. Our hard work and innovative product have attracted recognition and support from all over the world. As a result, people everywhere are requesting the sale of the lucky iron fish in their countries. But this is just the beginning. Our plan is to take a significant step in reducing iron deficiency rates by globally expanding the availability of the lucky iron fish and providing the lucky iron fish to 1 million families over the next 5 years. We won't rest until iron deficiency is a thing of the past. And as a young startup, we still need your help. Help spread the word, help fund our cause, and help us put a fish in every pot.
Thank you very much. I hope that you've seen that through empathy, we have the power to change the world. Have a good day.
Big hand for Michele, please. I know you're all hungry, but a big hand, 3 seconds at least for each speaker. Come on, everybody. Michele, one second. You heard from Michele, 70% of brands will disappear soon. You heard from Colvin, 100% of advertising will disappear soon, which means we all need alcohol. And there's one person out there who's providing us with alcohol. Her name is Neeta Pradhan Joshi, and she's in charge of Himalayan Brewery Limited. And can she come on stage, please? Neeta? There's no need to clap because this is an alcohol brand you're clapping. A big hand for Neeta, who brings us the beer that we'll all be drinking soon. There's a memento that has to be given to her, Ravi. That's why everybody's looking around. It's not a bomb scare, so don't get scared. Yeah. There is a lovely memento. Michele, I think it's the same thing we've designed for every guest, which is a sort of portrait. There you go. And it's a great moment as Neeta hands over the portrait to Michele, who will now show it to the audience. Thank you once again to both of you. Thank you, Michele. And remember, we have after lunch more speakers as well.